her chest is vibration that helps soothe. What else about that cat?
They're soft.
They're soft. And we know that there's something soothing. The touch and our skin is the biggest organ we have. So that's why we give them touching toys. We give them fidgets, because we can get that sensory input from our skin and it helps soothe us. So at all times, we should have these everywhere we go. We should have some kind of little fidget toy for the kids that we work with. There should be a whole bin of them at your house. All kinds of different ones. Yesterday, one of the therapists pulled out one, and it was a frog, and when you squeezed it, the tongue came out. I'm like, oh my God, well, I don't know about that. So anyway, I'm going to stick with my little ones and some of them that glow. What other things did that cat do for her?
I adopted a daughter, and she bonded with the cat.
They bond with the cat. They bond with the animal personality. So don't we also see that cat brought warmth?
Yes.
And isn't that what we do when we're next to someone, and the oxytocin that gets released because of the relationship, the contact? So this little girl knew how to regulate herself. Now, she can't go through life with a cat in her shirt, can she? I can see it now, trying to go to 4th grade. Oh, I've got to bring my cat in my shirt. Sorry, school doesn't work that way. We're not going to be able to do that. So we talked about what are other ways she could get those same needs met. That warmth, that closeness, the vibration, the touch, the softness. So think about it. See, what we just did is we identified what that child needed, not what was socially acceptable, not what was within our frame of reference. Well, let's talk about your need to have that cat in your shirt. Let's do a 4-step plan to take the cat out of your shirt so that we can get to a place where you don't have to have that cat in there anymore. That would be what some people would do without looking at she needed that to regulate her. So I think she was pretty smart. The other thing is cold showers. So she went on a day trip. We took the kids on a day trip, and she got dysregulated, and they were at the creek. Guess what she did? Jumped in the creek, and everybody's like, well, that was the way she finds to regulate herself. The intensity of the water on your skin, that's one of the things we tell our kids with trauma history. Swimming is one of the best activities we can do because of all the engagement of the water on your skin. It's very visceral, and when you're in the pool, you're likely to play, and you get lots of touch. So it's a win-win on many fronts for our kids. Okay? So I think this young girl was extremely brilliant. We just didn't know how to interpret what she was doing. So when you slow down, we spent that time talking, they're like, oh, I get it now, I get it. When we slow down and look at the purpose of their behavior, and we use our Dick Tracy decoder ring and try to figure out, what do we think she's trying to do here? And we listen. We listen with more than our ears. We listen with our spirits. We listen with our bodies. Then we can pick up what she needs. And then we can advocate to get what she needs. That was the whole purpose of that one. I get a little sidetracked. Promote, support trauma-focused assessment. That's one of the things. We want to get an assessment right up front. What was the trauma history? What was the trauma timeline that happened? If you don't have those answers about a child that you're working with, we need to get those. Because you need to have the context. You need to have the, for you adopting a child, it's very helpful to know what happened over here. Because if I do, I can start to put pieces together. I can start to make the quilt of what her life looks like. And if we can do that, we may be looking at the quilt the whole time from the back side, and it looks kind of funky. We got seams and threads and all kinds of stuff, but we can help them construct it so from the front, it looks okay. All right? All right, next one. Take care of yourself, because if you're not putting oil in your own lamp and it goes out, where's that child going to be? So we have to make sure that we're okay. And whatever that looks like, obviously I'm promoting healthy choices of taking care of yourself, not alcohol and self-medication like that. We need to eat well, we need to sleep well, we need to exercise. Exercise is one of the best things we can do. Walking, the rhythmic movement of walking, or running, jumping, bouncing, basketball, jump rope, mini trampolines, those things have reset the brain in a very healthy, positive way. That rhythmic movement. If you ever get stuck with a kid and the kid's not, it's not in a good place, ask them to go walk around the block with you. Just the rhythmic walking and movement. When I'm not having a very good day at work, I try to get outside and go walk. I have tennis shoes in my Denver office so I can go just put them on and get out and just go. And if I have a difficult phone call, what do we do when we're on the phone? We think it's just because we're restless. No, that's helping our brain, both sides work. The left and the brain, right side talk to each other. Okay, next. So, myths to avoid. My love should be enough to erase the effects. We already talked about that. That's what'll get you in the door. That's like only getting married because you love somebody. Well, you're going to be challenged if love's all you got. Okay? My child should be grateful. Well, are they there? Developmentally? Can a child be there? Thank you so much for providing me with cereal every morning. That's so thoughtful of you. I really appreciate the fact that you've given me a warm bed. And the sheets smell so nice. Oh, and my toothbrush. It's the cleanest toothbrush I've ever used. We're going to get that. If we do, you probably...
You're being sarcastic if you get that.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, they might be. Seriously, what kind of detergent do you use? These sheets stink because they might smell clean for the first time. Okay, so they're not in a place, and there's some research that we show that kids without a good attachment from very early on are not able to develop empathy. And so we're saying, wait, you hurt me, you just hit me and that hurt. They're not able to develop that empathy. They don't get it because they're not able to feel for others because they're such in survival mode and only taking care of themselves. And that's all they can deal with. But they can't take care of your feelings as well. Okay? So we can't ask them to be somewhere they're not. When they have a traumatic history, they've got to sit before they can stand. They need to stand before they can, well, they need to sit before they can crawl. They need to crawl before they can stand. They need to stand before they can walk, and they need to walk before they run. They come in our home, we go, okay, let's run. Like, I'm not even sitting yet. Have you noticed? Hello? I'm not even sitting yet. So let them be where they need to be. Sometimes our kids, we need to backtrack and help them go through developmental phases and complete them to get here. So if we notice a child having difficulties with something, maybe we need to take them back here and help them work through those. Okay? And I've done it even literally. I had a 12-year-old that I worked with, an adopted child who was extremely flat affect, who really had not had very much experience in a loving relationship. The family I was working with adopted him at age 6. And mom was really upset because she would try to get him to, she would grab him because he wouldn't walk with her, he wouldn't stay up, and she would just grab him and he would just lose it. He would just deteriorate. And they came to me and they said, we don't know what to do. So I had mom and dad sitting there, and I had dad look at him and eye contact, really, and touching him. They were holding him, and I said, Dad, and I was sitting behind them so I could coach them. I said, Dad, tell him that you wish you'd been there, and you would wish you'd been able to change his first diaper. So the dad started saying, I wish I'd been there. I wish I'd been your parent so I could have kissed on you. I wish I could have heard your first words. I wish I could have seen your first steps. Well, mom and dad are crying. I'm crying because, and the boy is flat. He's just there. He's hearing it, but he's not taking it in yet. So they continued to go. And so they started just rubbing his arms, and they kept saying, we love you, and there's not anything you could do that would cause us to love you any less. So what started to happen is the boy started, you could see him kind of relax into his mom. He was sitting in front of her. I had her just kind of containing him, and he started relaxing into her. And he started telling us the story that when his mom would grab him, it reminded him when he was young, about 2 or 3, and he was in a psych hospital, they would restrain him. And they would belt him down, his arms and his legs, because he thought he was out of control. And so he would fight for everything he had. So guess what happens? Mom grabs him, triggers that trauma reminder. So he goes into survival mode, fights for everything he has. So we decided that, he was about 2 when that started, that he needed to go back and have that done again. So mom started rocking him at night. He's 12. looks 9, acts 6, developmentally 3, okay? So mom started rocking him at night, did it very gently, only what he wanted, what he was comfortable. He just loved it, melted into her. Only took a couple of weeks, and he progressed then to the next stage. He didn't need that anymore. He got that need met. He was able to go to the next stage. But if you don't have it, you got to get it. You don't just, oh, missed that one, move on. Babies don't just go from sitting up to running. You've got to have the steps in place, okay?
And somebody along the way thought it was best for a 2-year-old to get a type 1.
No comment. Somebody didn't know what to do with a child who was behaviorally acting out. So that's what we did. You got to remember, this would have been about 12 years ago. This child's probably 14 now. This would have been about 12 years ago. We didn't know what we know now. So when children freaked out and acted out, we restrained. There's still organizations in our city that use restraint. You talk about igniting a kid's fight response.
Even an adult that knows that, it's unacceptable to fight, is going to fight with restraint.
Right.
No.
Well, think about getting arrested and you get put in, not that I have any experience with this, but getting put in handcuffs, your first, or they get pushed down to the ground. The first response is to fight, okay? So, yeah, it's one of my personal things about restraints. I'm not a fan of, and that's one of the things for foster parents and for our VRP staff, is that we can't do anything that would constitute limiting movement or restraining, unless we're talking about safety and a child's getting ready to run into the street and we grab them to protect them. So that would be like the only time that would be appropriate, which I am grateful for. I never have, nor will I ever work in a place that puts hands on kids in less than a positive healing way, because it ignites them. So here's another myth. My child shouldn't love or feel loyalty to an abusive parent. Well, even in the worst cases I've seen, and even in sexual abuse, they create what's called a trauma bond. And so because of that trauma bond, they feel an affinity towards that parent. Who am I to tell them that that's being disloyal to me? No.
It's like Stockholm Syndrome.
It is. It's like the Stockholm Syndrome. Very good example. Thank you. It's better just to move on, forget, and not talk. I was abhorred when, that's not the right word, but it was abhorrent to me that when they had the Sandy Hook elementary shootings, the news was saying, we're all coming together, let's just not talk about it. Be very careful to not bring it up so we don't re-trigger kids. Are you kidding me? They just went through the most significant event in their life and we're saying, shh, tiptoe around and pretend it didn't happen. Don't anybody mention it. How? I wanted to call ABC News and go, really? Really? What are you guys thinking here? If we just don't mention it, everything will be good. They didn't mean harm, but that's one of the most harmful things that we can do. We need to. Now, here's kind of the process in trauma work. We can't resolve trauma. I can never fix it and tie it up in a little bow what happened to a child. Trauma can't be resolved. But what we can do is we can express. And if we can express it, we can process it. If we can process it, we can understand it. If we can understand it, we can integrate it. We can find a place in our lives for it. But we have to express it. And sometimes we have to express that trauma over and over and over and over. We can do it through narrative. We can do it through movement. We can do it through words. But we don't have to have words to express it. How many of you have all seen the movie Secret Life of Bees? Anybody? It's a great trauma movie. You need to go watch it. So, the young girl, I'm not going to give anything away, but the young girl at the very beginning kind of sees a scene and she sees shadows and hears things under a door. And it lays this imprint. And the rest of the movie, she's impacted by this trauma that occurred very early on. Well, she doesn't really talk to anybody about, oh, I saw parts of this distressing situation and I need to talk about it, express my feelings because I think I'm having some difficulties adjusting. No. At one scene, she's in what they call the honey room, and she's taking jars of honey, and she's walloping, and she's throwing them against the wall. She's expressing and processing. I think we all need a honey room. What do you need to do to help a child find their honey room? Their ability to express and process that trauma. And it doesn't have to necessarily be verbally, right? So, imagine a real child. We're going to skip this. Let's go on. Sorry. So, square breathing. Now, this is, why is breathing so important? You can do the whole thing. Why is breathing so important? Hello? It slows down our system and helps us engage the left side of our brain. What's the left side of our brain do? No, not loser. It's the cognitive. It's the logic. We need to get the logic side of the brain up to where the expressive side of the brain, the right brain is. So by breathing, 4 seconds in, hold it. 4 seconds out, hold it. Let's try it. And I want you to really think about a deep belly breath. Okay, so let's breathe in for 4 seconds. Hold. Breathe out. Hold. Breathe in. Hold it. Breathe out. Hold. And what you're doing is you're also creating mindfulness. Because if I can be mindful about my breath, I can be mindful about my emotions as well. It also creates that space. I may not be able to think, but I can at least have a space to pause and be mindful about the moment where I find myself. This is a great thing for us to do. It's a great thing for our kids to do. It goes into, there's a lot of meditative practices. There's yoga. There's a lot of people out there that have written, Daniel Siegel for the staff have written Mindful Therapist. It's an excellent book. And he talks about doing the breathing helps the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain talk to each other. So, which is the wizard and the lizard brain. Have you heard about those terms? The lizard brain is the brainstem, the lower part of the brain. That's what takes over and deals with our just our breathing, our automatic reactions, and then the wizard brain is our thinking processes. That's where we actually can learn and process through things. Okay, so let's take a quick break. Take about 5 minutes. Get up and stretch so you can get some blood going. I think there's coffee.
Not coffee, but there's cookies.
But there's cookies over there.